Hi, this is Greg with Northern Audio, Music to My Ear, and back with another edition of What's in My Collection. So we put together a little bit of a collection of records and CDs, some reel-to-reel tapes, and basically, what's in my collection? What am I listening to when I demo for folks at home? A lot of, folks, audiophiles, that's one of the big things for us. We like to impress people when they come over. So this is what I'm showing during the holidays. So first up, this record here, you actually can get these. This is a local guy who's doing these, but what's cool about this record, it's all vaudeville type music. Certainly not something that's going to be modern. But what's cool about them is it's 78 RPM, micro groove, modern day grooves in stereo. So if you think in the time domain, that's why people will do 45 RPM records in the same 1 second you're passing that much information. Well, think in terms of 78 RPM, it's even that much more information. So the etching and the 3D instruments floating in space kind of effect, it's something that you don't really hear because, like I said, nobody's doing these kind of things. So we do have these in stock downstairs at Music to My Ear. But if you're looking for something cool, demo record wise, and certainly something to talk about that nobody's really ever seen, this is a good one here. Next up, if you've been in the store, I'm real big into the Japanese jazz. A lot of that has to do with how they record. It's very much like Duke Ellington sound, and they go back to the old world methods of using large studios, record on analog tape. So Three Blind Mice is the label who does a lot of that stuff. And this here is kind of like a compilation record that gives you a smattering of all of the famous Three Blind Mice records. You'll see Misty, there's Blow Up, Midnight Sugar. Those are some of the famous ones that a lot of people will know. But this is a cool record, like I said, as it gives you kind of a demo of each record. Something on here for everybody. If you're not real into Japanese jazz, but do want a just a nice one to show people, this is the one to get. You can find this on Discogs. We'll put the links below for everything. So this way you can go click and see the exact pressing of what this one is here. So that's the Three Blind Mice famous sounds up. Next up, this one here, Francis A. and Edward K. So that actually is, if you look, it's Frank Sinatra and Duke Ellington as kids. So this is a record that we randomly found. I had no idea this thing sounded this good. But basically, it's Frank Sinatra and Duke Ellington together. The sound stage on it is incredible. I mean, the size of it and the depth and the layers of it, the space in between the instruments, the vocals, Frank Sinatra always sounds good. He's especially sounding good on this record, a very alive and present. And, it also has that same Duke Ellington panache to the recording, if you will, where, you have the real airy horns and just the big giant airy kick drums, and just it has that polish to it coupled with Frank Sinatra style vocals. So really, really good record. You don't need to hunt down an old one, actually. They just repressed this. I believe we have a couple downstairs at Music to My Ear. It's a different cover. It's going to be mostly black with blue lettering. It says Count Basie, Duke Ellington, and Frank Sinatra on the top of it. But just come in and ask. This is currently in print. Definitely demo quality wise. Speaking of Duke Ellington, here's a random one you don't see often. This is Duke Ellington Unknown Session. That's literally the title of it. This is the demo pressing of it. This is one of those, Duke Ellington recordings usually sound good. This one's pretty special. This one has a more analog liquid sound than most of them do. It has that, the sound stage is just another foot wider, another foot deeper than most. And, the space in between the instruments, the way that it paints the sound stage, it's Duke Ellington typical recording times 10. So if you can hunt this one down, this is certainly a rare record. You probably can find it on Discogs. We'll put the link below for it. But if you can find it, definitely worth grabbing this guy here. On the Duke Ellington kick, you'll see we have a couple of these guys coming up for Duke Ellington. But this guy here is a little off the beaten path. It's Ellington Strayhorn Suite, and they are coupled with, I believe it's Pure Hint. Forgive me if I mispronounce that. I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments. But this is a not your typical Duke Ellington style music, but they put a little bit of swing to it, and it has some different instrumentation, more classical instruments to it. So the blend of the two, and it has a real neat presentation to the sound stage. It's kind of a blending of jazz and classical music. So the dynamics, a very dynamic record. But if you're in the Duke Ellington, you're in the big band, but looking for something a little different, you've collected all the usual mainstays. This is definitely one to find. Shouldn't be too expensive. Um, Another Duke Ellington guy, concert in the Virgin Islands. The next couple ones I wanted to show you about Duke Ellington, because a lot of people know the usual jazz party and whatnot. These are some ones that have that same exact polish to them that you may not know about. This is a live record, concert in the Virgin Islands. Very atmospheric. It does a very good job of capturing the whole concert and the crowd and its involvement. And it's not a very tinny sound or any. There's body to it. There's a lot of texture to the presentation of you really can tell they're on a stage, and the way they present it, though, it doesn't have that tinny effect. So if you're looking for a really good live Duke Ellington record, again, off the beaten path, not a lot of people know about, certainly will turn some heads. This guy here, Duke Ellington, concert in the Virgin Islands. Then last of the Duke Ellington records, another one of those off the beaten path one. One of probably my favorite Duke Ellington song is on here. Kind of Dukish, walking in rhythm, but piano in the background. So usually Duke Ellington is the lead man in the band, but here he takes the back seat and kind of lets the band ride, if you will. It's some of the grooviest, some of the just swingingest jazz you'll ever hear. If your foot don't tap on this, I don't know what'll do it for you, but it sounds wonderful. It is that same Duke Ellington polish, but again, the music is great. That particular song is just everyone's loving it by the end of it. It may be a Duke Ellington song you've never heard. They have done that song several times. Look for this particular version. So on this note, if you think it sounds good on there, holy smokes, on reel-to-reel tape. This is the definitive version of that piano in the background. There is this, that analog warmth to it, fills in the space with that thick-bodied, rich, textured sound stage that only tape can give. And again, this is back from the era when they were doing things more of a one-to-one rip right off of masters. They didn't have all the different layers and sound, in the sound recording process that they do today. So a lot of these tapes can be the definitive version, even though being 7.5 IPS. So again, this is not going to be a cheap one. If you see it come up, hopefully this gives you a little bit of validation. This one's worth grabbing if you're a Duke Ellington fan. Definitely one of my coveted reel-to-reels, if you will. And then lastly, on the Duke Ellington kick, everybody knows this album, Jazz Party in Stereo. You may not know that it was done on reel-to-reel. So what's special about this one is this is not a 4-track tape. This is actually a 2-track. So what that means is you have twice the space on the 1/4-inch tape, basically twice the fidelity of your typical tape. So this is just mind-blowing to hear. It's kind of like having Duke Ellington and the folk perform for you right in the room. The engagement to the sound stage, it's one of those you can kind of walk into it, as far as the way it paints the picture of the sound stage, the color of the instruments. It's one of those. It's a unique Duke Ellington recording and a unique way to hear it, because a lot of people know this on vinyl, and it takes on a whole new life form on the tape. Again, not going to be cheap, but again, if this gives you validation, another one of those demo-worthy recordings that people will not forget. And then lastly, to throw a different piece of media in there, this guy is still available, albeit goes in and out of stock, can become hard to find. But the Duke Ellington theme, we were just on the Japanese jazz, so they very much mimic the way Duke Ellington was recorded. Very large recording studios. If you notice, the sound stage are very big, where it sounds, the drummer will sound like he's 100 foot back in the room. A lot of cases, that's the way it actually was back then. So they try to mimic some of that stuff. And this one here, Speak Low. So forgive me if I mispronounce it, but the Yamamoto Trio, this is on vinyl as well. It can be hard to find. It can be a little pricey on vinyl. The reason why I'm bringing this up is the Super Audio CD sounds just as good. If you have a Super Audio CD player, you can get this and live with that. If you record on reel-to-reel tape, even better. This is probably the definitive way to do it. Much more affordable, much more achievable. Great demo for Japanese jazz. So that wraps up this version here. Hopefully that gives you a few ideas, if not validation, for some things you may have seen on the internet that will be a little bit pricey. I can tell you they do sound good. And we'll be back with more. So thanks again for listening to the music.